We hear from a lot of organizations, no one's going to attack us, usually because they don't hold credit card information, or they don't have personally identifiable information. Or we hear things like, we've never been breached, we're not going to be breached. If you think no one is going to attack us, that usually means you don't understand the breadth of the threat and the breadth of the targets that they go after. And if you're saying we've never been breached, it probably means you may well indeed be breached, you just haven't detected it. In fact, a recent study showed the average time that malware goes undetected in someone's systems is around 200 days. So what do we mean by cybersecurity and by the cyber attacks that they're designed to defend against? So it's when someone, without permission, steals information, confidentiality. This could be intellectual property, customer data, financial data. But it's also integrity when someone changes data. So if you think about the invoices, for example, of a major supplier of yours, those bank details being changed to a criminal's bank details, and suddenly that money ends up in their account. That's changing the integrity of the data. And then lastly, availability, taking your systems offline. Now, the obvious example here is a website. You hear examples every day of websites being taken down, but it's also the critical systems that can underpin your business. Email, industrial control systems are increasingly being targeted. But the main takeaway here is that cyber attacks are not something that happen to your computers, it's something that happens to your business. So there are three main groups that conduct cyber attacks, and they all have quite specific motivations and targets. So we think there are 6 main things that companies are getting wrong. The first is not understanding the threat, because computers don't attack computers. People do. You've got to understand who's likely to target you. Why are they going to target you? Therefore, what are they going to target, and how are they going to do it? If you can answer those questions, you've got the basis of building a proportionate defense that can help you understand what you need to do to defend yourself against the particular entities that are interested in you. Next, it's not detecting or responding. But increasingly, organizations are building higher and higher walls around their networks. But if you look at these advanced attackers, they're increasingly targeting individuals, using phishing emails, compromising websites, using social engineering. And then you add to this the fact that 1/3 of all data breaches come from insiders today. You can see that having a very high wall around your network is not going to be the full answer. Next, it's about relying on compliance. Now, there is some very useful guidance out there in terms of ISO 27001 and necessary guidance in the form of PCI compliance. But you can't rely on them alone, because the people who attack your business are attackers. You've got to think like an attacker, because you can't think like an auditor when looking at your systems and how you need to protect them. And then next is not defending against advanced attackers. It's not a bunch of teenagers in bedrooms, which means we need to get increasingly sophisticated to counter that. And then it's not protecting critical assets. This is first about identifying in your business what those critical assets are. Do you know what the top 5 things in your organization, information assets, are that underpin your business or would form the highest cost of compromise if they were breached? And then finally, there's an over-focus on expensive technical controls and IT solutions. This is not something that IT can solve on their own. So overall, these 6 things, what does it mean? It means that you need to have a threat-led understanding of your business. It means that you need to understand what it is that you're trying to protect. And then you need to focus on people and process in tandem with technology. Now, the UK government did a data breach survey, and they found that 81% of large organisations suffered a breach over the last 12 months, a 2014 survey. And they broke down the costs of the breach into some of the major buckets of where the spending goes if you suffer a cyber breach. First one being around incident response costs, so investigation and remediation, what happened, how do we fix it? But also loss of business, operational loss, downtime, then compensation, regulatory fines, and then the kind of more nebulous but often really important damage to reputation. And together with some additional costs, they therefore estimate that at somewhere between 600,000 and 1.1, just over 1.1 million pounds. But I'm afraid to say that's pretty grossly underestimated, in my opinion. The Ponemon Institute does a similar survey on a global basis, sponsored by IBM. And in that, not only did they start with the fact that, I think they said, data breaches have become more common than the cold, but far more expensive to treat. But they estimated the cost at $3.5 million at an average breach, which is about twice that. And then at the far end of the spectrum, there are significantly higher costs.